And get yourself settled. We've got cookies and papers on the side if anybody wants any cookies throughout the evening. First of all, thank you all for coming out here tonight and being a part of this. This is the pre-legislative session town hall with the elected state lawmakers who are going to go represent you up in Denver. We have to my left here, firstly, State Senator Tony Exum. Just beyond him, State Representative Amy Pascal. And at the far end over there, State Senator Mark Snyder. For those of you who might not know me, I'm Ryan McCoubry. I'm the legislative aide for State Senator Tony Exum. So I work with him up at the Capitol building and everyone here. I'm going to be moderating this panel tonight just to help lead the discussion for everybody. But we're going to start just by giving each legislator a couple of minutes just to introduce themselves and to describe, if they'd like to, what legislation they're thinking of working on for this upcoming legislative session. So we'll start with the gentleman to my left here. We'll start with State Senator Tony Exum.
Thank you, Ryan. And thanks everybody, good evening. Thanks for being here. Or good late afternoon. Tony Exum Sr., I represent Senate District 11, which is southeast Colorado Springs and part of southeast El Paso County. The borders are, the west border is Nevada Avenue. The east border is just beyond Mark Shuffle. The north border is Constitution, and the south border is Fontaine, to kind of give you some boundaries. Probably about 168,000 residents. Unfortunately, only about half are registered voters. And in the last election, only about half of the registered voters participated in the election. So we need more people to participate. If you're a registered voter, you need to vote because it's very, very important. Not voting has consequences because somebody may get in office that doesn't share your views. So your voice is your vote. Okay. This is I just finished my 11th year as a legislator. I served, I know, feeling old. I served 8 years in the House, and coming up on this, starting next month, will be my 4th year in the Senate. And Lord willing, when the creek don't rise, you'll see my name on the ballot for a re-election in November 2026.
Good.
Last time. And I said that when I finished in the House. Take that with a grain of salt. Yeah, I know. But this is for reals, for reals. And I serve on the Transportation and Energy Committee, and I'm the chair of the Local Government and Housing Committee. And it's an honor to serve you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to go over just a few things that I'll be working on in this upcoming legislative session. And just so you know, you can go on the state's website and get any information, everything you ever want to know about all of us, but we're afraid to ask, including things that we stand for, bills that we've passed, bills that we've co-sponsored. And what I'd like you to concentrate on is look at what our platform has been, and look and see if our votes and legislation lines up with that. If it doesn't, you can question us, but I think you'll be pleased that what we say is what we do. Just a few things, and then I'll pass it on to Representative Pascal in just a minute here. The first bill that I'll be working on is called Accessible Building Standards. It's a cleanup bill from DOLA, just clarifying some definitions and updating references related to CSR 9-5, dealing with accessibility for housing. And it has to do with our disability community. For some reason, a bill last year didn't include accessibility for individuals with disabilities for modular homes and for townhomes, which is a big mistake. Anytime we build homes, they need to be accessible to our most vulnerable communities. So we're going to fix that fix up, clarifying those definitions in that bill. The next one is homelessness activity prevention program. This is an existing program. The bill is eliminating the homeless activity prevention program advisory committee and gives the Division of Housing and Authority the power to administer that program. The reason for that is that the advisory committee was only meeting once a year. But as you know, this program is to help people that are kind of on the verge, you know, maybe one check away, one paycheck away, or one incident, one medical bill away from being homeless. And so this is a program that's been in existence for a while to help them. And the next one is transit equity. It's a bill requiring that the public transportation entities offer lower fare rates for lower income people, which almost all of them already do, and makes sure that the lower income people are aware of those lower rates available to them. The next one is from the Wildfire Matters Review Committee. The bill from the Wildfire Matters Review Committee creating the Wildfire Matters Mitigation Plan Certification Enterprise to review the wildfire mitigation plans, electric utilities that are not rate regulated by the PUC. It's very important. And then the next one is the Home Act. Some of you remember last year we had the YIGBY bill, Yes in God's Backyard. This is an updated version. We're removing churches, but adding nonprofits which work in the affordable housing space. The reason we had to do that is for some reason, some legislators didn't like the word God, didn't like the word church in the legislation, which is baffling to me. Because if you look at the policy was about creating more opportunities for affordable housing. Because we're in an affordable housing crisis all over the country, and especially in Colorado. So we have a new title, and it's the Home Act. And hopefully we can get that bill through. It passed the House last year, and I wasn't able to get it through the Senate because I had 6 of my colleagues on my side of the aisle that voted no, so it died on the calendar. So we're hoping that we can change some hearts, change some minds, and get that bill passed. Churches can still be involved, but they'll have to work with a local nonprofit like Habitat for Humanity and whatnot. And basically it's, if you have some extra property, up to 5 acres, and you want to build affordable housing on that, there's a process, an administrative process that you'll have to go through to get that done. We're hoping we can convince our local government that we want to work with them and not work against them to create more opportunities for affordable housing. And then the last one, I just agreed to be a co-prime sponsor in the Senate with Senator Roberts on this next bill, is Transit and Housing Investment Zones. It's a bill to help local governments partner with OEDIT to identify population growth areas and create investment zones in those areas to build up transportation infrastructure like curbs, roads, trails, bike paths, bus stations, offsetting construction costs with tax credits. And it's going to be financed through tax increment financing. And it's just another option because of our budget crisis that we have, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on in the evening on what we're looking at. But this is to partner with local governments to create more opportunities for building housing near transit areas, because we know people that live close to transit areas that can use our bus or rail to get to work or get to where they need to go. That is good for everybody. So that's a few things that I'm working on, and I will pass the mic over to my colleague from House District 18. Representative Peskin, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Exum. My name is Amy Pascal. I'm the representative for House District 18. That is on primarily the west side of I-25, Garden of the Gods, and south. And it's also downtown from Uinta down to Las Vegas and then over to El Paso Street. In the legislature, I am on the Energy and the Environment Committee, and I am also on the Transportation, Housing, and Local Government Committee. So the bills that I am looking at this year, and we still don't have all of our bills in, they're not complete, so it's all preliminary. Well, some of it is. I am going to be working on a bill that has to do with county commission redistricting. I don't know how many of you folks observed the county commission redistricting last time. It was in 2023. We do it at least once after each census. And the last time we did redistricting, our county commissioners appointed themselves the redistricting committee. So we had one member that drew their own district. Yeah, so I don't think that's cool. And there was an option to have a nonpartisan redistricting committee. I'd like to change that, so that's required. I don't want anyone drawing their own districts. Also working on a bill with Mothers Against Drunk Driving and the White Line. This is a bill that has to do with ignition interlocks, and what that is that if you've had a DUI, now what they do is they take away your driver's license. So we do already have a program in place where you can opt out of that and say, hey, I really need to drive. I want to get one of these interlocks that it's basically a breathalyzer, and so it does a test on you, and you can't drive, you can't turn the car on if you're above the legal limit. And so we already have that program, but we actually were a pioneer in that program, and so we've had it quite some time, and Matt has continued to work on getting other states on this program, which they have, and they've updated their recommendations for how the program should work. So this bill gets Colorado up to speed with their current recommendations. Also working on a bill for Colorado Department of Transportation. This is mainly a cleanup bill. It works on eliminating statutes that are no longer germane. There's some of the things are, let's do this report in a certain year, and then the certain year goes back past, so we're going to eliminate that sort of thing. It also does some removals of duplications, makes things a little bit more efficient. This is a bill that the CDOT wanted to get the Transportation Legislative Review Committee to adopt, and oddly, that's an interim committee that has some bill writing privileges. We can run 3 bills during the session. And oddly, we didn't adopt this bill, which I think it's kind of a weird situation because we all get to 3 votes on which bills we're going to run. And I think, in my mind, I didn't vote on this one because I was like, yeah, obviously we'll run that bill, right? And other people did the same thing, and it ended up not getting enough votes. So I want to make sure that one gets through. Also doing a bill on, for the Department of Natural Resources. They want a supremacy over all classes of wells, and they have applied to the federal government to receive that. And this is the statutory changes necessary to give them that supremacy. Right now they have oil and gas wells, but there's 6 different classes of wells, and they want to have supremacy over all of them. And I think anything that puts the onus on the state instead of the federal government is good for us, especially given the situation, so I'm running that bill for them. Also going to be second chamber sponsor on a bill that addresses age verification for minors in phone apps and social media, and introduces a specific a mechanism of doing that, which is in line with a bill that California passed this last session. And I think it makes sense for us to align with California, that they're the heaviest hitters for software development. So I'll be doing that bill. I have a couple other transportation bills that I'm on from the Transportation Legislative Review Committee. One of them is very, it allows us to use e-titles in more application instances than we have in the past. An e-title is just your title for your car is just, it's not a piece of paper. It's just a certificate. And the primary users of these are like car dealerships and fleet operators, so they can bulk do these type of titles. It does not require individuals who are buying a car to have to do an e-title. You can still do a paper title. And the other one is a change to, right now we have grants that folks can get to update their vehicles for making them cleaner. And for vehicles that are 26,000 pounds and bigger trucks, we haven't had a lot of people applying for that because really the technology for both battery and hydrogen are really not quite there yet. So this allows owners of diesel vehicles to trade in an old diesel vehicle older than a certain date and replace it with a new diesel vehicle and get help with that. It's in place for 5 years only, and then we'll check back again at like where the tech is in terms of hydrogen and battery. And last but not least, certainly in terms of taking up my time, I am working with Senator Schneider and Representative Caldwell, who is up in Monument, Black Forest area, and Senator Simpson, who is not in El Paso County, on a bill with Colorado Springs Utilities. Colorado Springs Utilities is in a situation right now where they are concerned about their ability to meet the 2030 requirements for reducing greenhouse gases. So utilities are required to reduce their greenhouse gases by 80% relative to the 2005 levels. And Colorado Springs Utilities has been working on this for the last many years. They closed down the Drake coal plant. They've purchased solar. They've purchased wind. They've got one battery. And they have a plan for what they call their Horizon plant that's going to be out by the airport. And that's primarily going to be gas-burning turbines, but it will also include a battery. So, and the gas-burning turbines are like better than coal. So they're not 100% clean, but it's on that track. So as many of you may be aware, Colorado Springs Utilities recently got approval, I think it was a year ago, to raise the rates for electricity 6.5% a year for the next 5 years. And yeah, everybody knows about that. And much of that money is going into this new Horizon plant. They're also adding in a second gas line to come down here from, I think it's from Wyoming, the source of gas. Right now we only have one line, and that's a bit of a concern in terms of lack of redundancy. So the situation CSU is running into is they don't think that they can meet that 2020 guideline, or I'm sorry, 2030 target date. And so what they are asking to do is to have a process by which they could file a plan to get an extension. And so that's what we're working on, is that bill. CSU definitely feels they need to be in the mode of filing an extension. As you're probably guessing, that would mean closing the coal plant a little bit later. So they're working on right now their updated EIRP. I don't know what the E stands for. Is it? Electric. Oh, good man. Integrated Resource Plan. So they'll have their updated one out in June. So we'll know exactly where they're going. And they are looking at a lot of different things right now, including geothermal, potentially more solar and wind, even looking at a shared nuclear resource with another entity, which would be a small modular reactor. So they're looking at a lot of different choices. We don't know yet what they're going to be, but they right now are pretty confident they're not going to be able to hit that 2030 date. So they're hoping to get a process by which they could file a new plan. So working on that with Senator Schneider and others, and some other possible things. But I'll pass it on to Senator Schneider. I've talked a long time, and he's laughing at me for talking too much.
Thank you, Amy. I am Mark Snyder, State Senator, District 12, and a brief recap of my many years in public service, but I started out building trails, then I was chair of the Open Space Committee in Manitou Springs, then I went on the Planning Commission, then I went on the City Council for 6 years, and then I was mayor of Manitou Springs for 6 years. Took a little time off, and then in 2018 ran for House District 18 and was successful. So I served two-year terms under the old House District 18, and then after the redistricting in 2020 went into effect, there was a new House District 18, and I got elected to that for a 2-year term. And then in 2024 was the newly drawn Senate District 12. It was the first time it had been held an election. I was able to prevail there. So I'm not sure what to do with myself this summer, this interim, because I've always been running every 2 years, and now I don't have to think about it if I run again. No, I will. But, and I mentioned all that. First, I really want to thank you and apologize to any Broncos fans here. I had one ask for this town hall that did not conflict with the Broncos game, but somehow we weren't able to accomplish that. So, but I appreciate you all being here. So I have run, this will be my 8th legislative session starting up on January 13th. And actually we've had 3 or 4 special sessions in the last year, ever since COVID. And so there's been a lot of time up there in the legislature. And my aide, Christy Harris, put out, I think, 8 of the 23 bills that we passed last year. So real quickly, spousal maintenance guidelines, it came to my attention that when you're in the throes of a divorce, you often have one spouse who's the breadwinner and one who doesn't make as much, so that they generally have to, pay their alimony. It turns out, even in a case of domestic abuse, courts are not allowed to consider that domestic abuse in awarding spousal maintenance. So we opened that up to allow for the court to consider a history of domestic abuse and making their spousal determinations there. I'm on the Uniform Law Commission. So I serve under Senator Exum on the Local Government and Housing Committee that he chairs. I'm on the Senate Finance Committee. I'm honored to be a member of the CHAFA Board, the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, and I'm the legislative representative to the Colorado Commission on Aging. So I was talking about the bills from last year, and you can grab one of those sheets if you would like. I'll just hit a couple of them. Drug overdose, education, and opioid antagonists in school. We all know about the scourge of opioids and fentanyl and these new designer levels of even more powerful hitting the streets. And as sad as it is, we have to get down into the middle schools and the high schools and start educating kids, not only about the dangers of opioid use, but also how to administer Narcan and help another student who may have ingested something and has stopped breathing to administer Narcan, keep them alive so paramedics can get there. Let's see, one I worked on last year really hard and ended up not getting that much out of it was increased penalties for careless or reckless driving. I think we've all seen that just the numbers have skyrocketed, the number of pedestrians and bicyclists who have been injured or killed. And so we passed a bill last year that made people who were victimized of careless or reckless driving are eligible for the Victims' Crime Act, which gives them a lot of safety and resources. And also, if you have multiple parties injured in a careless driving incident, each one of those can be a separate thing. Which is a good segue, I guess, since everybody's talking about the bills they're working on. I am working with Senator Carson from up in Highlands Ranch on improving on that that bill. So we've been working all summer with the DAs and the criminal defense bar, the public defenders, to see what we can do in the area of what's a vehicular homicide. And, you know, it's tough because we're trying to find that dividing line, because there are genuinely accidents. People are not inebriated, they're not under the influence of drugs, they're not speeding. Maybe it's a time of year like this when the sun gets low on the horizon, it's really hard to see. At the same time, we just have so much carnage going on our roads and bikeways. So we're really still trying to work on something we can do there. You know, it's very challenging in the current configuration, at least in this legislature under Governor Polis, since I've been serving. You know, there's a real disinclination to increase criminal penalties. Many of my peers truly believe that increasing penalties does nothing to deter crime. At the same time, you can imagine what it must be like for a family who loses a son or daughter who's out for a bike ride and they're killed by a reckless driver, and that person gets a slap on the wrist. If a good DA decides they want to prosecute them, they can usually find a case, but many times these people are given probation, and that leaves the families very dissatisfied. Amy did a great job of explaining the CSU bill. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a challenge, but it's legitimate. I think one thing maybe she should mention is one of the unique aspects of Colorado Springs Utilities is they service all 5 military bases here in El Paso County, and they require a much higher level of reliability. I don't want citizens to suffer brownouts or blackouts, but you can imagine for a military base, if they lose their power source, it can really wreak havoc on them. I'm working on a bill with on homeowners insurance. So I had a bill last year. We were trying to create a special enterprise for hail and wildfire damage. That bill didn't make it. It would have put a 1% premium tax onto people's insurance policies, and we even knew it last year, and even more so this year. Affordability has got to be one of our guiding principles, because things are getting so expensive. We know that the federal health care subsidies look like they're going to expire because Congress can't seem to pass anything these days. So that, and the rising costs of groceries, property values, and property taxes, everything's kind of going up at one time, and a lot of people are going to be feeling the squeeze. So this bill basically has 2 parts. One, right now we have the Wildfire Mitigation Enterprise. It's been a very successful program. I know Manitou Springs, Green Mountain Falls, and Colorado Springs have taken advantage of that. We're thinking about opening that up, the applicant base, to include homeowners associations and perhaps even individual property owners, allowing them to access those grants. And the idea being, if we properly mitigate the areas around a home, it should reduce their fire risk, and ultimately, if it decrease the rise in homeowners insurance premiums, and ultimately lead to perhaps even lowering of those. The other part of that bill creates a separate savings account for property owners and HOAs, where they could, much like a health savings account, so they could set aside some income tax-free into the savings account and use that to up the product level of what they get. So right now, if your roof is destroyed by hail, Allstate says, okay, pay your $5,000 deductible, and then we'll put another $20,000 roof on, just like the last one that just got destroyed. But there's products out there now that for $3,000 or $4,000 can greatly increase the resistance to hail damage. So that's one that came from the bill last year, where nobody really liked putting an increased cost on people. This was voluntary. It would allow people to upgrade their products if they get the opportunity. Otherwise, I have a cleanup, kind of an omnibus bill for the FPPA, the Firefighters and Police Pension Association, and it's just going through some of their regulations and parts of Title III, Section 8 particularly, were written in the early 90s and haven't really been addressed. So things like, right now, if you're a firefighter and you think you suffered an injury and you're 50% disabled, you have to go to 3 independent separate doctors all to agree with that. Seems overly burdensome, so we're going to reduce that to just one qualified doctor. If they agree that you are 50% disabled, that will help you along with that. I've got a DMC bill, Destination Management Companies, something I've just recently learned about, but it's actually a very big and growing industry. So if a big entity like Google wants to hold a 5-day retreat at the Broadmoor, they go to these companies and they say, we'll take care of everything. So everything from arranging travel to hotel rooms to events and all that. And they're currently being taxed disproportionately, and they should just be taxed like any other business. So that's what I'm working on. I've got a small bill for the land surveyors. We passed a bill last year that allowed them to use electronic means, and this would allow them to actually file a land survey electronically. I've got a guardianship bill, a uniform Guardianship and Conservatorship Act is one my predecessor, Bob Gardner, ran 2 years ago. He was also a ULC commissioner, Uniform Law Commissioner. Got it right up to the finish line, but it had $6 million fiscal note, so we weren't able to get that passed. I made a run at it last year and ran into the same problem. So now we've got a much smaller guardianship bill that we're working on to improve the lives of people that are in need of a guardianship. Two bills with the El Paso County Sheriff. One has to do with out-of-state identity theft. So there's 2 Colorado cases in the Court of Appeals, decisions rendered this year that basically said if somebody from Texas gets a hold of a senior in El Paso County and convinces them to give over their bank information and they take over the identity theft, they find the person, they arrest them, they have him extradited to Colorado to face trial, and the courts have ruled that there's not a sufficient nexus for somebody in Florida or Texas to be tried in Colorado. So it's a legal fix, doesn't increase any penalties, just would allow them to be prosecuted here. Otherwise, you've got the victim having to go to another state for several weeks maybe, and it just becomes outrageously inconvenient and expensive for people. The other one has to do with home improvement contractors. So right now, home improvement contractor says, yeah, I'll build you a new deck. I need $1,000 up front to go buy the materials. So that can be a legitimate business plan for some. It also opens the door for scam artists and others to take your $1,000 and dissolve their corporation and create a new one the next day. So we're looking to eliminate that possibility with an affidavit system. Got a bill for the caterers. I ran what was called the LAG bill, the Liquor Advisory Group. It was a big group of people, came together for 18 months, came up with 30-some recommendations to streamline and make more equitable the way we do liquor sales in Colorado. We have a 3-tiered system. Somehow the caterers' language got changed in the final draft of the bill, and so they want to just fix that. Currently, the independent small liquor stores are requiring that caterers buy their alcohol from them. And I've never really favored that kind of thumb on the scale for folks. So it would allow caterers who have their own liquor license to buy the liquor, go to the event, and serve that liquor as a wedding or a reception or something like that. Got another bill that didn't get out of the House last year, but it has to do with a gap in our law for child rape. Believe it or not, when somebody harms a child, oftentimes the first offense, they're let go with probation. And really, the law as it is now, you have to be convicted twice of that type of child abuse before you can be charged with a felony and sentenced. So we're going to try and make a run at that again this year. Got 3 bills with the Attorney General's office. One is really good. It creates coordination between all the various state agencies, so specifically to look for redundancy and superfluous regulations, and really streamline those and get rid of any time we have 2 regulations basically regulating the same space. Another one is CCPA, Colorado Consumer Protection Act enforcement, specifically speculative ticket sales. I think we're all pretty upset if you're trying to get tickets to a concert, they go on sale at 11 o'clock, and you get on there at 11 o'clock, and already half the seats are gone already because of bots and all these other things. So it's a tough space. And then another one just kind of codifies settlements related to realtors. And there's a lot of different provisions in there. I haven't really studied them on that one, to tell you the truth. We've got a bill for direct primary care providers who currently are excluded from getting Medicare or Medicaid. So folks that go into them basically pay cash, and because they are paying that cash, Medicare Medicaid says we must have money, so they don't currently allow that care. But given the dearth and the shortage of access to medical care we have, I think it'll make sense to let these, they're all physicians, fully certified, allow them the ability to take on Medicare patients and have Medicare pay for some of their billing. We got the new reckless and careless driving, where we're focusing this year more on what's known as extreme indifference. So if somebody is driving with extreme indifference, total disregard for the safety of others, we're trying to find a way we can make that kind of bad actions into a punishable offense. I've got a little fun bill that's for the newspaper delivery people. So right now, the Department of Labor has determined that even delivery drivers for newspapers should become FTEs, which would put a lot of small papers out of business and drive up the cost for everybody else. So I don't think it was ever their intention to become a full-time employee. You know, they do this often as a second job or a third job. So they're trying to clean that space up. And then 2 Uniform Law Commission bills, the Mortgage Modification Act and the Transfer for the Benefit of Creditors Act. And yes, they're as boring as they sound. So that's just a little run through of the bills I'm working on right now. But thank you all again.
Before we get any further, I want to go ahead and acknowledge that we did invite State Representative Regina English to be a part of this panel as well, since she's a currently elected member of the state legislature. She couldn't be here because of a scheduling conflict, but I also want to acknowledge that we have several other elected or candidates for office here in the town hall with us. Candidates running for county commissioner, for state representative, for Congress, for lots of different offices. So if any current or elected official or candidate would like to just stand up, and everybody just stand up and wave quickly, just so we know that there are several people here. Hey everybody. So these are some people who are going to be scribbling some furious notes, cribbing from the elected. Yes. Yeah. And Charles Johnson elected to the school board as well. Just wanted to acknowledge those people for coming out as well. The people that you see up here represent you at the state government. Everybody who's with you in the audience represents you or is trying to represent you at different levels of government as well. We heard a lot from the different lawmakers up here about the bills they're going to be running. Not every bill is the most thrilling technically bill, making changes to this administrative procedure or that state agency or whatnot. But some bills are going to be big swings and affect a lot of people with significant impact to their lives. How are you guys going to run those bills? This is a question about the budget. How are you going to do anything in a situation where the state budget is going to be harder now than it's been in the past? Someone, please talk to us about the state budget. Let's start with Rep. Pascal.
Oh, Lord. I'm probably the person that knows the least about it, but I will do my best. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that I've been in office for 1 year. So these guys are far more senior. Probably you all know the budget is going to be very tight again this year as it was last year. We do, just to give you a little overview of the budget, about a third of the budget is taken up by education, and I think that's K-12 education, and about a third is taken up by Medicaid. And so the remaining is very tight, and as many of you know, the The bill that passed last year at the federal level changes things about Medicaid. It changes how much the federal government is paying in terms of what they match. It also requires the states to qualify people twice a year instead of once a year. So that's kind of the doubling the work on the state government. It also requires some work requirements that also increases the work and is going to increase software expenses. We're going to have to change software to do that. Another thing I didn't mention is that I'm on the joint technology committee, which what we do is we hear all the proposals from the state departments and from higher education for technology budget requests that are over a certain amount. I can't remember the exact number. But one of the things we will be hearing about is our benefit management system, which is what's going to manage Medicaid, as well as all the other benefits. But they will require some kind of money this year to make those changes. And we have, the budget process is ongoing. The joint budget committee starts in the fall. They have been having hearings, so they hear from all the different departments in terms of what their needs are. Governor Polis has also put out his bill, or his proposal for what he thinks the budget should be. So that has happened so far, and I'll leave it there and let someone else speak more to it. That's sort of a very high level view of it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rep. Pascal is correct, but I think what we have to realize is Colorado has put ourselves in a terrible, pretty much unique position here. I'm not sure the history exactly, but back in the early 90s, maybe the late 80s, we decided to tie our Colorado taxing system to federal taxable income. If we had tied it to adjusted gross income, we would have saved about $260 million from the increased cost we incurred from the passage of H.R. 1. And, you know, there's a lot of factors in Colorado. I'm not a hater of Tabor. I think a balanced budget is not an option. It should always be a requirement. But still, some of the draconian parts of Tabor still exist, and that really makes it challenging for us to recover from, say, a recession or H.R. 1 and some of the impacts that's having on Coloradans. I've been calling for years that we need to have a big come together with all the right players at the table and really figure out how we want to collect revenues for the state of Colorado. You know, Governor Polis talks about he's not a fan of the income tax, and I've actually become to think there's some merit to that. But the one we have now, 4.4%, applies to everybody, whether you make $100, $100,000, or $1 million. And people call that a regressive tax system. Although, you know, technically, if you make a lot of money, you pay more in taxes. But we need to really start from scratch and figure out how we're going to, because the numbers are just gloomy going forward. Medicare, Medicaid expenses are running at, increases are about double of what inflation is. And of course, we're capped with how much we can grow our budget, which is capped at 1% growth plus a small inflation factor, or population factor. And so that is just outpacing us so fast that within the next 5 or 6 years, if we don't make changes, almost the entirety of our general fund will go toward Medicare and Medicaid and K-12. So all the other programs and all the other agencies we won't have a funding source for them. So something that should have happened long ago. I'm hoping that our leaders, the governor, and others will come to realize that if we don't address this problem, Colorado is not going to be thriving in the next few years.
Senator Exum, comments on the budget?
Yeah, just real quickly, thanks Rep. Pascal and Senator Snyder for their comments. Most of the bills that the legislators will be running, you'll see a comment for the physical note, and it'll be gifts, grants, and donations, because there's not going to be very much money, if any at all, to fund legislative bills. So, and if the Joint Budget Committee has already asked us to, if you have a fiscal note on your bill, and a lot of us don't know what that cost is going to be until the bill is introduced and a fiscal note gets put on it, that they're asking us to find ways to reduce that. But you'll see a lot of pieces of legislation. The fiscal note will say gifts, grants, and donations, and that means that there's no money in the general fund to fund your bill.
So not only is the state facing a significant budget issue, but part of the challenges that I'm sure you guys are going to be facing in this next legislative session are going to be in response to things from the federal government. Can you talk to any legislation you think might be coming in response to things that's happening at the federal level of government regarding immigration or redistricting or any of the different issues that are hitting the states from this administration? Do you think some of that stuff's going to be addressed in this upcoming session? If so, what? Let's start with Senator Snyder.
Well, I think we saw in the special session the first real beginnings of that. So we took away some of the deductions. Companies were putting money offshore into some of these countries that are completely forthright with everything. So we've eliminated the deductions that they got, and they brought that income back into the taxable sphere here in Colorado. I think there'll be a lot of more technical versions or programs that come forward. You know, one of the things about the legislative process is until a legislator has their bill so-called right across the desk, oftentimes nobody else knows what's in there. I operate differently. I get my bills out there early because I want to see who's going to be in opposition, what problems there are, what maybe things I can fix ahead of time. But, you know, I think the majority of bills, you don't know anything about until they get right across the desk. So it's hard to know what is specifically coming. You know, we passed propositions LL and MM, which that capped the deductions for high earners. And that brought forth the money that we can use to fund healthy school meals for all. There's also talk now of a ballot measure, I believe the Bell Policy Center is pushing forward, that would turn Colorado to a progressive tax state. So we would have different categories of taxation depending on your income level. And they're estimating that would bring in $4 billion a year. I'm still working through the details of that. But like I said, we have to address this now because it's not getting better. It'll just be worse if we kick the can down.
Senator Exum, any thoughts on responses to the federal government at the state level?
Sure. A couple of things that we've had to do in response to the federal government is Immigration Safety Act, which basically says that it informs our local residents that maybe in the immigrant population, informs them and educates them on what their rights are. Because what's happening is that from the federal government, they've kind of given a unregulated ICE program to just pull people over, go into schools, go into courthouses, wherever they think immigrants may be, and they're violating their rights. So the act that we passed for Colorado does a couple of things. It just helps to educate individuals if they do come across an ICE agent, and some of that is working. Some of it isn't because the ICE agents aren't following their own their own laws, their own regulations about, they have to identify who they are, they have to have a warrant, which many of them don't. So those are some of the things that we've done to help with that. And then because we have to balance our budget, we've agreed to reduce our reserve fund in order to find some funding for Medicaid, because of the HR 1 federal bill cut the portion of the federal government to Medicaid about a little bit over $1 billion. And so we're trying to find funding to help those that could be without any type of medical coverage because of that major cut from the HR 1 bill.
And then I'll ask Rep. Pascal the same question, and then we'll open up the audience to questions as well. We'll have you just raise your hand. I'll go ahead and call on you after Rep. Pascal answers. And then we'll start taking questions from the audience. So, Rep. Pascal, any thoughts on what you expect this legislature to do in response to the federal government?
Well, first I want to highlight a couple of things that we did pass the last session. One had to do with immigration and ICE. That bill required or told that local police that they can't share information with ICE. And it was the focus of that bill was on protecting private information and saying that information cannot be shared. I'm not sure how well that's being implemented at this point, but we did pass that bill last year. And we also passed a Colorado Voting Rights Act, and the goal of that bill was to ensure that all the rights that were in the Voting Rights Act of 1964 were put in the law of Colorado, just in case something changes at the federal level, that we would have those rights intact. Another thing that I have heard folks working on, and I don't know a lot of details because I'm not on the bill with them, but there are some folks working on requiring ICE workers that they can't be masked and that they need to have some kind of a badge and they need to identify themselves, which we know is not currently happening. So that's one thing I know people are working on. And like I said previously, we are working on, this is spending money to be able to implement the federal regulations in the software that we have.
All right, so now we'll go ahead and open it up to audience questions. We do have a portable mic that's going to be brought around. So, Christy, if you want to pick someone let's let the gentleman up here in the front.
So, thank you for working on the CSU problem. It's a very interesting problem from different perspectives. What are you going to do in that legislation to support CSU, but at the same time shut down Excel from trying to do all the games that they're doing with Comanche 3 and Comanche 2, because they're going to play on anything that happens, especially when we start changing AQCC rules.
Yeah, I've heard that. This bill, I think, is only going to be directed at municipal utilities and co-ops, so it won't impact Excel. Is that correct? Yeah, okay.
There's, to follow up on that, Bill, there's not a clarity on whether or not a municipal nonprofit utility like CSU can avail themselves of the federal clean energy tax credits. Investor-owned utilities, absolutely. So when you look at Excel, and suddenly they decided, well, they had damage to one of the towers down in Pueblo, so they asked to keep the other one open. It was supposed to close by the end of this month. They got permission. It's hard sometimes to read the tea leaves. I have seen a sea change in my 30-plus years around here being served by CSU. I have to admit, at the beginning, they were kicking and screaming about these clean energy goals and mandates, but they've really come around full circle. So they are now a leader in this space. They run the largest solar array in Colorado, out east, and they've really embraced a lot of alternative energy. They even got the water energy coming down Ruxton Canyon, reactivated that. So when you push hard and steady on folks, they will find a way to accommodate. So now for them to come back and say, yeah, we promised in our 2022 IRC that we would meet these goals by 2030. Well, now everybody's fighting for the same tax credits, the same materials, so we have supply chain issues. Costs have escalated much higher than were estimated just a few years ago. So what I keep telling them, though, if you really want to get this relief, they've got to sweeten the pot. They've got to be able to say, you know what, by 2035, we will be at 90% renewables, or something. I don't think with absent some kind of incentive that the environmental community, or the governor's energy office, or the governor himself is going to be inclined to support this bill. So it's a work in progress.
Hi, my name's Danette. I use she, her pronouns. As a volunteer, I do advocacy in the LGBTQ plus community with Inside Out Youth Services and Peace Like Colorado Springs. I'm concerned about the anti-trans legislation that I'm assuming will come in this legislative session. So just asking you to be concerned, knowledgeable about what families with trans kids are going through right now. So, we're available to help and educate. We'll be there on lobby day, but we know they're coming. And our state leaders, like One Colorado, Rocky Mountain Equality, they spend great amounts of energy defeating this stuff. So I just want you to be concerned and knowledgeable and aware, and take advantage of the organizations that do the work to help you know what's important. All right, thank you.
Hi, so you guys have been talking about budget issues. Have you thought about allowing public funds to be deposited into credit unions as well as banks to open up competition, keep our money local, and also potentially get you a higher rate of return on the funds?
Yes, that's been talked about. I'm not sure about any current legislation. I know there was some talk last year about doing that. I'm not sure if that bill got any energy, but there's been some talk. I don't serve on the business committee. I don't think anybody here serves on the business committee, but I know there's been some talk about that.
If I may, I did sit on the business committee in the House for 4 years, and this is 2 or 3 times these have come up. Credit unions are very successful right now, but you have to realize too, the credit unions are nonprofit. They are not subject, as banks are, to the Community Reinvestment Act. And I think allowing, they seem to be wanting more and more of the abilities of banks. But until we can level that playing field so that they have a Community Reinvestment Act requirement, they have a built-in advantage over banks. And particularly at risk and concerned are the small independent banks in Colorado. One of the other things they've been seeking is the ability to buy small banks. And you would think the small bankers would say, well, that's great, that's another potential buyer in the market. But they see it more as an existential threat that they will buy up these small banks and continue to grow like they have been. So public funds, I think about 38 or 40 states already allow that. I'd be willing to enter those discussions again with the credit unions, but there has to be some movement on their end to make sure that they're paying the same that banks pay, including the Community Reinvestment Act.
Hello, I'm not sure I have any questions on people to ask. Only one. Oh,
We have to get back in the queue.
okay. Well, I'll just go with something that's personal for me. Mesa Ridge is in your area. And in October, on October 12th, there was an attempted mass shooting. We were able to get the students in question, as well as get all of their weapons. Many parents were concerned that there was no metal detectors. According to the secretary there, she mentioned, well, we had it all taken care of, and she was very nonchalant, I didn't like that, but we had it all taken care of, and a parent just blew it out of proportion. What are we doing to make our kids safer in our schools?
Whoever wants to take that one.
Well, thank you, and it's a great question. It's also a very tough question. So I remember when the push back 5 or 6 years ago to get rid of school resource officers. And, you know, it wasn't a mandate, but they got rid of them up in Denver and other places, and they have since reinstituted the school resource officer. In Manitou Springs, when we were having trouble funding that, we actually partnered the city of Manitou Springs with D14, our school district, to hire an officer who would work as a school resource officer during school time, and then could be an extra patrolman on the streets of Manitou when we're busy over the summers. I support hardening of schools. I wasn't always on board with that, but as far as just making it, you know, as difficult as possible to somebody, you know, get a loaded weapon with bad intent into those schools. But I think that's something that we have to look at, hardening them. I mean, most of our kids, if not all of them now, have never gone to school where they haven't had active shooter drills. It's heartbreaking. And you saw what just happened in Australia and Brown University. So this scourge, I wish I had the answers, but I think as far as K-12 and hardening those schools and putting officers on patrol, working at those schools would be a necessary first step.
One of the, a couple of things that we've done in the past few years that we created grant programs for the schools, for school safety, and we left it up to the schools to decide how they want to improve safety on their campuses.
All right, next question, show of hands. So we've got
Hi, the person holding the microphone is my wife. I absolutely guarantee this gives me zero sway or influence in any way, shape, or form, except maybe over my children sometimes. So my question is back to Colorado Springs Utilities. First, I have a basic comment. If they cannot meet the 2030 deadline, which I believe, Rep, you said that was 80% reduction, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
So my comment is, I understand that. Obviously, we want to work with them. I think this is not a, second place is not a winner. And if they can't achieve the goal that was set, we need to find out exactly what their plan is, period. Now, my question is this. If they're supposed to have an 80% reduction, how much have they reduced so far? And yes, I heard you say they've done what both of them, Senator, Representative, they've done quite a bit. How much reduction have they made? And how much will they fall short at 2030 to get to the 80%?
That's a good question. They've reduced so far, they're in the 40s somewhere, 44%, something like that. And we still don't know what their plan is, so I don't know exactly where they're going to fall short. But believe me, they have started, you know, like, I have been bugging, can't think of not a bad word. I mean, they need to have a plan. right, for us to believe this is a thing. So I have been pushing very hard on them and have made it very clear to them that they are going to, their IRP is due out mid-year, which is June, and I've told them that is too late. I mean, great, that can be when that plan is out. But we have to have something before, and what I've told them is before it comes to the Energy and Environment Committee in the House, starting in the Senate, you're going to have something solid, or it's not going to pass. And so I have been repeatedly telling them that. And I think that's absolutely required. It's not a free pass.
We don't want to run afoul of our climate goals and our renewable energy goals. And we're making great strides in Colorado. But I think one of the problems is we pass these laws and these requirements that affect everybody. And not every energy producer or utility is the same. So you have investor-owned utilities like XL and Black Hills that have multi-billion-dollar budgets and operate in 8 or 12 states. I'm not sure exactly what it is. It allows them to absorb the costs of what we're doing in Colorado much easier because they can draw on all those other parts they have. You look at CSU, they are the largest municipal in Colorado, but we know the boundaries. Basically El Paso County and a few other places where they supply power. And I think we have to recognize the unique qualities of these different utility providers sometimes when we pass legislation. One size doesn't always fit all.
Yeah, I also want to comment on the fact, I don't think I completely connected the dots when I was talking about the 6.5%. It's not that they couldn't meet 2030 reduction by then. They could. It's physically possible, but the question is, can we afford it without raising the rates more than the 6.5%? So that's the real crux of the biscuit there, is that they don't feel they can do it without either the rates going up substantially more or getting into reliability issues.
All right, let's move on to the next question here.
There was recently an article, I want to say the Colorado Reporter, that said that the governor is looking at using funds from PARA to try to balance the budget. And I was just wondering, are there no other alternatives? I mean, I know they borrowed from PARA before and finally got that paid back, but are there no other reserves other than PARA that you have at your, at your disposal other than going into PARA again?
Well, I actually do serve on the interim PARA Review Commission, Pension Review Commission. We didn't meet this summer. Part of our budget cuts was eliminating a lot of those. Are you maybe perhaps thinking of Pinnacle Insurance?
I heard PARA too, I heard that too.
Yeah, because we had the grand bargain that I believe was the year before I got to the legislature, where the state agreed to shore up PARA by contributing $225 million a year into PARA with the goal of having them be fully funded in 2047. We're still holding firm on that commitment. We pulled, the governor is a pretty smart guy. He prepaid that 225. He prepaid 180 million of that one year. So the following year we had a much smaller PARA contribution. Also was the year we rolled out universal pre-K and all-day kindergarten, which just happened to cost the state $180 million. But we're back on track to make those payments. I have heard about some trimming of some of the benefits. We haven't, or the COLAs that PARA has been able to give have not equaled the rate of inflation. But I don't know of any effort to balance the budget on the backs of PARA. We fully understand that. Frankly, in Colorado, in many jurisdictions like my little Manitou Springs, we rely on that to recruit and retain good employees, because we don't always pay somebody a really competitive wage. But we tell them, okay, you may not be making as much as you could make in Salt Lake or Dallas, but we're going to take care of you when it's time to retire. You're going to have your benefits. So that would be a terrible message to send if we were to start messing with the para formula. And realize too that in the early 90s, para was fully funded, in fact overfunded. And the legislature at the time thought it was a good idea to lower the contribution rates across the board, and that has led us to where we are now, where it's only about 65% funded.
We'll go ahead and take 2 more questions from the audience, and then we're going to offer some final comments, and then we'll wrap it up and we'll stick around to answer some questions in person for everybody. But we'll take 2 more questions from the audience.
Okay, one quick CSU question. Since your legislation doesn't say give them the extension, but rather allows them to ask for an extension, have you given some thought to what the standard ought to be that they ought to meet to show that they should get an extension? Should it be best effort, reasonable effort, circumstances beyond our control? Any idea about that?
That's a good question. And right now, I think that's amongst the negotiating side of the bill. And I don't know if Senator Schneider is starting it in a sense, or maybe you have more ideas about that. But I would like to see some guardrails personally.
I'm sorry, you guys seen what?
Guardrails.
Guardrails.
Yeah.
So, as that's the specific questions that you asked, this is asking for some time period of extension beyond 2030. And it's really all about closing the last coal plant we have down at Nixon.
Would the process require?
Wow.
That's TBD, but what would the process require out of the applicant?
Oh, right, how should we, so, well, I have been privy to some of their internal documents, which are really public documents, where they show me that it just doesn't pencil out. That the costs that they'll have to incur and pass on to ratepayers will be too big of a bite for people to absorb. You know, there's a lot, I'm not a utility economist, expert or anything, and I think part of our issue is that the Colorado Springs Council, a lay council, does double as a utility board. And so a lot of times what you're hearing from the higher ups, from Travis Steele and others, you don't have the institutional knowledge to know if those things pencil out the way they say or not. But I think that's what it's going to take, is they're going to have to, you know, pull back the curtain and show folks, this is how we planned on doing it, this is what's changed, and this is where we are now.
And I think that they realize that asking for a 10-year extension is a lot.
Yeah.
Like Senator Snyder said earlier, they're going to have to sweeten the pot a little bit to bring that down. Because my biggest concern is the consumers, the people that we represent. That utility bills are going to go up regardless of whether they get a 10-year extension or a 5-year extension.
Okay. My name is June Waller, and I have a great concern on the budget. And that has been most of the information we've received tonight. We've established that you have the Medicaid budget and the 3 parts of the budget. What happens when everyone's budget is very small and they see an avenue or a path where the federal government can come in and bring money? What is the role of the state government to have some control on how far they can go? For instance, I keep questioning, why do we need 2 detainment places with ICE in El Paso County? Okay, so that money is going directly to the county. Do you have a say in that to protect us if the county doesn't want to listen, that we don't want to? I question if we want one. But no, I need to understand where is your role as far as federal money coming into our community?
That's a good question. I don't know that we do either.
So Ms. Waller, Colorado uses a distributive share formula with all of our federal funds that come through. So it'll go to the state, and the state will then distribute it out. I know in public health, they go through the county boards of health. And so depending on your population and other factors, that money is then handed out to the 64 counties in Colorado, and they run their programs there on the local level. As far as detention facilities and money that comes, I'm not sure if that follows a similar path. I think we've seen that the Trump administration is not overly concerned with the letter of the law, and so they're constantly doing these kind of secret deals where they're trying to open private prisons. I know of a case out in Oregon on the coast where they were all but ready to buy this facility and operate it as an ICE detention. As Rep. Pascal said, we've already passed laws of not allowing local government, the police forces, to provide ICE with information. But it is generally, like for instance, the facility up in Aurora, the state has absolutely no say in that. That's a federal preemption. We don't have that ability. But when it comes to what they want to do here in our county, yes, we can energize, we can educate people, and we can push back.
Thank you.
Say, I was going to give them an opportunity to do final closing thoughts. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to ask, do you guys okay with waiving that, and we'll just continue taking questions from the audience? Okay, so let's just continue taking questions from the audience here. Christy's going to keep roaming around with the microphone, so hands up. And we'll try and do, since we only have 10 minutes left, try and do quick questions and quick answers to try and get through everybody if we can.
All right, so I'm Liz Rosenbaum. I live south of Fountain. Mine is actually a thank you and an appreciation for House Bill 1006. This added $80 plus an extra $29 for each additional family member into health insurance tax credits on Connect for Health. That was working. And that was a huge relief to especially my younger clients. You know, they're working full-time, they're just above Medicaid, and the corporate greed would have made it impossible for them to afford health insurance, even with the regular tax credit. So I want to actually tell you thank you for forward thinking and taking care of the working families here in El Paso County and across Colorado. And I really appreciate that. That even helped small businesses and nonprofits. So I wish we could solve the corporate greed level, but I appreciate that what you could handle, you definitely did a big lift for us. So thank you.
This isn't really a question because there was so much about CSU and public utilities. I sat on the board for 8 years. And so just so that everybody knows here, it meets at the intersection of relationship, rates, and reliability. So we've never had a brownout or a blackout here in Colorado Springs. Anytime the rates go, I've never had a call while I was on council or on the board of utilities saying thank you so much for the rates going down, ever. In 8 years. But as soon as those rates went up, people were up in arms. And people don't understand that we fund the utilities, the people, the customers, and the CSU is beholden to the ratepayer. But when those rates go up or reliability doesn't exist, it's really tough to balance. Now, finally, green energy is getting cheaper and more cost-effective, but I just want to point out that in 8 years, like my first 2 years, it's such a high learning curve. But after 8 years, you kind of get the drift of what's going on. It's so technical, but people have to understand, as soon as your rates go up, you weren't hearing it, and there's a reason. It's not like any of it's profit. It all goes back to infrastructure
and taking care of everything. So just keep in mind that I lived in California 21 years, and I suffered a lot of brownouts throughout that time. And I just had that comment because of all the comments on CSU.
Thank you, ma'am. I know you had your hand up early, and I'm glad you're getting a chance to ask your question.
Thank you. First, I do want to make a comment. I want to thank Ryan and Mr. Tony for opening it up to us in the neighborhood in your district for this. And I acknowledge you too, Senator Snyder, for your work that you did a while back on the Devon Bailey case. So thank you. I know I have a picture of y'all back then. But anyway, my name is Kalena Gibbs, and I'm the El Paso County Coordinator for the Colorado Assembly. This is Dr. W. Scott Sanford, the State Coordinator, and this is our Land and Soil Jurisdiction Sheriff, Bruce Reams. My question to you, especially Mr. Tony, is are you aware that the 4th Judicial District Attorney is on the Brady list?
What is that?
The Brady list is a nationally known platform of charges, criminal charges against, from social workers to police officers to judges to district attorneys. This greatly affects the justice that is coming forward. I worked with a gentleman, and we have filed in court in Denver a point in a case in regards to that. I just wanted you to become aware. And no, we are not sovereign citizens. We are sovereign, but we are governed. So we stand for truth, justice, God-given rights, and birthright freedoms. So I wanted you to know that, and I have some stuff that I would like to give to you afterwards. If that's okay.
Thank you.
In the back, it looks like we've got the Johnsons might have their hands up for a question.
I'm going to get this young man right here.
Hi, my name is Jackson Richardson. I have a question for all of y'all. So, I go to school, and I'm just wondering, so our school's going through a suicidal, like lots of kids are saying they want to commit suicide, and I'm just wondering, what can y'all do to help them stop saying they want to commit suicide?
Thank you, Jackson. That's my great nephew. We have a number of programs through Department of Education to help kids that are facing that or considering that. I think it's 6 free counseling sessions.
I'm not sure the number. Something like that.
But there are
3. Okay.
There's help out there. If you know someone, or you know someone that knows someone that is considering that, what is the 988? Thank you. That's the line to call, and they'll get them to someone they can talk to other resource they need. But thank you for the question, Jackson.
Say we have 1 minute left, so if we want to do one final question, we can do that.
Okay, I'm going to walk over to Miss Gloria while I'm doing that, because we didn't get to every question, and everybody's always got questions. To email any of these fine legislators, it's their first name, last name, chamber. For Amy Pascal, it's amy.pascal.house@colledge.gov, and all the aides are here, and we would welcome your questions.
And there are some cards over by the sign-up sheet if anyone wants my card.
I want to thank you all for doing this. Hello, everybody. My question is, we know that everybody doesn't agree how you vote for the bills. And the question I get from my Hispanic community is, why do they vote so one-sided? And when I was trying to tell them that you have to vote according to your constituents, and we know that's a big question. So when your Democrat people are asking you why you vote so much with Republicans, how do you get them to understand that bill has to be passed for everybody? English or Spanish, I don't care.
So the question was, why do we, sorry, I don't think I got it. Why do we vote with Republicans sometimes?
Yeah, how do you explain to somebody that there's a need for that? To pass something, you can't always pass one-sided. You have to work to get along.
Oh, so why do we do bills with Republicans, I guess, is one of the questions. I mean, I did a lot of bills with Republicans last session. About 3/4 of my bills were bipartisan. And I think it's really, I live in a very mixed district. It's like almost half and half. So it's a close district. So I have people of all different political party affiliations in my district. So I do think it's really important to work with Republicans to be able to make sure that we have a bill that appeals to everybody in the district. I don't always, but many times I have, and I think it gives you a broader perspective. Another thing that I did last session was it's harder for a Republican to get a bill passed in a legislature that's majority Democratic in both chambers. It doesn't mean that Republicans don't ever have a good bill. And so I actually jumped on as the second person in the House with Republicans to help them get their bills passed because I thought they had good bills. So I think it's really important for all of us to work together. And I mean, we can't always agree, but I think most of the people are sort of in the middle and want us to work together. And I think it's important that we do that to the extent that we can.
And I think we have to look at the policy too, not necessarily who's running the bill. Look at the policy. Is it moving Colorado forward? Is it helping people? Is it not helping people? But we need to look at the policy and not necessarily who's sponsoring the bill.
Yeah, I agree with everything they've said. By bringing a Republican on board, and I have probably 75–80% of my bills I find are Republican sponsored. One, you get a different perspective, and you got to realize roughly 40% of the voters in Colorado are Republican or Republican leaning. That's 4 out of every 10 people. So if they can be that bridge where you can hear perspective of some of those more Republican people that you might otherwise hear. And second, it makes it a lot easier to get it through the legislative process and less likely that Republicans will filibuster the bill if one of their own is on it. So there's a practical reason for that too.
And also our governor encourages bipartisanship on legislation. And all of us, I know a number of my bills in the 11 years that I've been to legislation have Republican co-sponsors.
That is time. Thank you all for coming out and joining us this evening. These guys, we're going to stick around for a little bit. We still have the room for a little bit, so if you guys want to ask some questions one-on-one, feel free to do so.
And also, ladies and gentlemen, as you leave tonight, thanks to Hillside Connection, they have some box lunches over here.
Yeah, here's some food.